I know for the assignment. As get started with some housekeeping. We maintain this list, but if an emergency, list of people that are in the building also Greco for having this morning. Susan is Susan of SG2 Recruit. She has several that she recruits. It had been one of them. So if you're looking for Susan, will be available. Out there, please feel free to take it home because with extra bagels and would happily I noticed before, just a quick, those of you who this is your first time, are you here because of the topic or are you here because you well, for the topic? And who is here? Be more involved. Accept that. As you probably noticed, most of you signed up on Meetup. Saturday of every month. It's his office, like we are now. Help us find home. Point another thing is if becoming more involved in NovaLUG and there is something that you are interested in presenting, you can either email me or so my yeah, the meeting and we'll talk. We are always looking for people. There's a limited. I become stand up here and talk about stupid. It's not. I'm going to try to ramble on because he's going to 10, 15. A lot of education. Those of you following along. An EC instance, building a RDS instance, and other necessary things. So go slow. The pictures will black. I'm about. Right. If we either have much coverage. What was it last week? Oh, last month. No, that. And he will be coming back. I'm going to discuss. Prior to that, we had Franklin talking to CM, a fork of Drupal stuff. MS, you had that look like, what the hell? The single maintainer. It's just a somebody he liked their fork, had little things that he thought they could do better that they were. Whew. Nope, not yet. That one. You know, we got Raspberry Pi related ones. This is at Office. Linux and Raspberry Pi. Basically, Red Hat's one for a discussion. Needs to be stretched.
Although it is a Linux users group, it does have to be, but I'm getting a hard time myself. It's open source. I realized to try it out.
Right.
Someone, or if you are able to talk about blockchains, I mean, there's definitely a popular topic these days that probably knows how to cover.
another topic I'm looking at getting what is on casting. Cast to do the Linux, and they, I assume, work at remote friends. We can get them take some time out and do a remote presentation for us. So, you know, anything related, and we're happy. I am going to suggest something at the end, and what I'm doing now. But I may end up doing. There's this. Hello. There's a seat.
There's a seat here. Chair. What's up, Byron?
So, all right. Can you guys? Okay. Is it visible? Okay. Peter, what are the lights?
The lights on.
I do understand. Of the slides you're going to see now. Shoot me. I'm fine with that. It just, if you've ever seen the URL for a Google Docs spreadsheet or anything, I'd need at least 2 of these slides to fit the whole URL. That's why I used it. And I actually created an account with me so that I have my own thing to help show it's going to be legitimate. It is outside the fact that yes, my password is the exact same presentation. And since it's about 10 past, I don't, we shouldn't be too else comes in. So, my name is John. I'm one of the organizers for North Linux users. Gentlemen, my co-organizer, Peter, who Red Hat into supplying our space. As Peter said, around 5 years, was the founder, right, Peter?
It was one of the 3 founders. Everyone knows that.
He last year in October decided to fade away into nothing. Mark and I organize. Going by getting to help me present. Today's discussion is going to be an intro to AWS and the AWS free tier. Will be a tier, one thing that they do charge for, and I've been using it at $1 a month, and that's this.
Yes, over there. I don't know why.
And I'll just what I'm going to cover, I'm going to do an AWS review. Here is, and pretty much the most popular things, the things that you will most care about. AWS is flipping huge, you'll see in a minute. Weekend, and you might have gotten to work on Tuesday. So I only covered a couple of things. Ones that people are doing most. The things I am going to cover is VPC, which is Virtual Private Cloud. And that allows you to network your cloud instances both privately, quote unquote, internally, and have external. EC2, Elastic Cloud Computing, the instances that you access. It's essentially a Linux computer, Windows computer. Did I say that out loud? I am not a fan. Some of the other topics we'll cover. RDS, which is Relational Database. Most of the things you'll be using AWS sites and have a back-end database. Storage service. It is a relatively expensive way to store data, and they do have a free amount for the first year. After that, it's not too expensive. The port that DNS uses is port 53. So therefore, they route everything through port 53. Last is IAM, which is Identity and Access Management. You can restrict, you can access, yes, you can delegate that ability. And then finally, I've got some resources, which is where I pulled a lot of my information. One thing I mentioned, if you are going to follow along with me and you are going to sign up for AWS today, you will need to give them a credit card. They need that because not everything is free, and if you overextend your free use, they're going to want to charge you. So they need a credit card. They will charge. They will. And that's it. There's one thing that caught me out the first few times I did it. So I'll mention that. Yeah.
Is that true for somebody who's already a member online?
Yes. You can. And it is. They'll also ask you for your address, ask you for a phone number, which they will call, and you'll have a code that you've got to dial in to verify that that's your phone. We're going to do all that in a few minutes. Just get ready for some phone calls. That's fine. And then at the bottom, I've got the last slide I have will. All right. Quick overview of AWS. It is by Amazon. Amazon Web Services. It is the ultimate in cloud computing. You have cloud database. They have a conferencing service. will allow you to do. The US is broken up into regions. The first region in AWS was in Ashburn. You go looking at the center that's completely unmarked. To go into, but US East 1 has been overrun. So US is the default, and that's somewhere. Region, they're available, and that is the intention of that is for higher availability. So you can have, in US East, you can have in 2 different areas of the data center. So if one area goes down, you still have access. There's some global services and that, and a couple others I'm just not sure off the top of my head. So the AWS free tier. There are 2 different products. Free tier. That includes 2 instances. And some that use those services for of S. Sure is so because it is for long storage immediately. For you to put some, for you to back to that, it can take up to 5 days. So they allow for free, and there's at the end free resources by both yearly and forever. AWS will only track your account by email. What do I mean by that? What I use to create much of this is my domain uses the -0110. In 2019, on January 9th, I can delete that account and be done with, and not have to worry about the free tier, and then open another account and give it the same name but a different date. And I use the date so that when I look at my email accounts, which I do once a month at the beginning of the month, so that I can get rid of it free tier, the free tier ever. Probably not exactly what Amazon intended for you to do, but you know what? I also use some of their paid services as well, so it's a trade-off, and it's also something that I am happy to use at work. And if somebody suggested, I'd probably say Amazon over Google or some of the others. Services, they say they will give 750 hours of service per month. 750 hours works out one in 1/4 day. So therefore, will never go over 750 hours. The other significant piece to that is if you decide you want to of the free tier, 75 hours of use from each one. So it's 750 hours. As long as it's in there too small, it doesn't matter how you divide it up. If you just turn them off. 750 hours. After that, they charge you the normal price. It's like a penny an hour. and which is kind of helpful because I have to use TurboTax for business, which is only Windows based. So I do it on AWS. I spin up a free tier instance. I do my taxes. I get all the information I need off, and I kill it. And it costs me maybe, if I do it over 4 days, it costs me $1. That's another good use for AWS. And on my personal account that's already used the free tier. So, AWS. Here's the website. That I also have it at the end of the last slide. In EC2, you get 50 hours per month of T2 micro smaller instance. T2 micro is a single core instance, virtual core instance with 1 gig of RAM, and I believe you can bump it up to 20 gig. It's either 20 or 30, so I went lower to be sure, of disk space. The default when you create an instance is 10. I think they'll let you bump it up. RDS is also 750 hours per month of TB T2 micro. Yes.
Those of us who don't know the acronyms, could you say what they are for first year?
Like these? Okay, I was asked to repeat RDS, what it means. I did. Yes, if you want, I will. Each service, I will again repeat what it is.
Also, what platforms are you talking about here? Platforms specifically?
T2 is there are some platforms telling you if your instance falls under free tier.
Amazon has their own limits. You can find Ubuntu up there, Fedora, you can find CentOS.
You can find Red Hat.
Yeah, and Red, well, yes, some of those instances may have paper software in it, so they have an additional charge.
Right.
So this is when you don't pay for it. You will be told that this actually repairs not just charge, but you have to pay for whatever subscription or whatever charge for whatever
Right.
one. CentOS.
And it, like I said, it will tell you if you step out of free tier, it will before you build it that you're not free tier.
Processor and as well as hard drive space?
Well, it will probably tell you with hard drive space. I'm not 100% sure, which is why.
When you
Okay. They do warn you, so thank you.
everybody says, I got all the information. If I start this, they will say you will not.
Right. And I do have a slide that shows that.
It's almost impossible to get charged by something by accident.
There are exceptions, and I'll point. Hold on. Yeah. So, and also there is a limit on bandwidth. I think it's 1 terabyte. Or so.
You're going to get charged if you do this.
Yeah.
I
They.
got an email was about a month ago that says we have prognosis on your use that sometime in September you are now going to be close to free tier on this service. And I'm using it for monitoring, but literally they will make sure that you know.
Yeah. They are really.
So, sorry.
No, that's fine.
So that basically means that you're limiting.
It's actually the home. Their versions of Windows are Windows Server, and they've actually recently come out and added Windows Server 2016, but I've done Windows Server 2014.
They have Windows 10, and I thought
Do they?
about Windows 7.
You know what? As I mentioned, pay much attention to that until I have my 4 days that I have to look at it. Uh, is oh, sorry, yeah, you did. Sorry.
I'm familiar with a lot of this, but what I didn't realize is that they did the free offering for a year.
Mm-hmm.
So that 750 hours, that's per month. So
Yes. It doesn't roll over.
another 750.
It starts first.
And run my own DNS server on manage my own DNS, my own domains, and not be charged.
Correct.
You can, with some stipulations.
Yeah, they're well. Yeah, there's
So if you say for a server that literally allows a backup, and that could be, for instance, you open up your DNS to allow server reversals and all kinds of other stuff like that. Where you go, if you set up a server that is not secure, as a no, you will be shut. So they will not allow you to run anything. But if it is basically secured and there's no, as long as you don't propose to endanger to apps. If they don't open it up, so they're trying to harvest so if you log in and use your that's your problem. But if you open it up, so you potentially people go in and do something with the apps infrastructure. DNS, I don't want to allow
people to. I just mean as name servers.
right, but part of DNS is to allow you don't sign on to a DNS.
and to be perfectly honest, Route 53 is so inexpensive. I mean, like I said, I've got 5 domains, and I've yet to pay more than $3 a month. And for me, the lack of hassle of managing my own bind or whatever. And I've got a few 53 as well because it does what it needs to do. So, you know, it is one of their it's not region restricted. That helped too much. Yeah. But it's a little more it can be a little more resilient than my own.
And then one last question. Sorry to
No, fine.
you covered everybody that's in the AWS. I don't think you mentioned what the availability zones were.
They have different availability.
So like A, B, and C. I don't
There's
think you.
right. It changes a lot. So they're constantly adding or removing adding as their need. And sorry for those on watching on YouTube. The question was what about availability zones, and each region has X number of availability zones, and those zones depend on the size of the region. Like obviously, as I said, Northern Virginia is overrun, so they have the highest number. And the purpose of that is to allow resiliency, high availability. You can stay in the same region and spread your out between different availability zones, and have a little bit more high availability.
I'm on physical servers.
Yeah, and I know what the availability zones are. I just
Okay.
wanted, in case everybody else did.
Okay.
It's the same principle.
Yeah. Yeah, and so, any other questions before I go? Okay. S3, they give you 5 gig of standard storage. They do have a higher level of storage, which has more redundancy. You can have redundancy across regions, and that does cost money. That's not included in the free tier, but it is pretty pretty well available, and they give you 5 gigabytes of storage. You can also use S3 as a static web page. It's not something I'll show you how to do because I've tried to do it once and it just didn't thrill me. I'd rather have my own instance on the web page and on the server, and there you go. And as I said, Glacier, they will give you 10 gig of free storage forever for Glacier. How do you get AWS free tier? Well, that's what I'm here to show you. And we'll start with that on the next slides. And I told you the requirements. You'll need an email, a credit card that'll put a $1 hold on it. It's only charged if you use any of their services. You'll need your email address and a phone. You'll get a robocall and ask you to put in a code that they have up on the screen. It's generally pretty quick and fairly responsive, unless you put the wrong code in which case it's a pain in the butt. Not that I've ever done that. All right, so creating an AWS account, and I meant to put the URL for this. To start on this, go to console.aws.amazon.com, and I can repeat that if you need it. And from there, there will be a sign-up link. Take you to this screen. And obviously, you fill in your email address. You give it a password. You confirm your password. The name is a friendly name you want to give. Otherwise, it'll use your email address. And it just makes it easier for you to remember. That's pretty much where it ends, that I've found. There could be a use for it. I just haven't cared enough to find it. What I normally do is my AWS account name is the email address minus @ my domain name, just so I know what I'm looking at when I'm on the thing. Is anyone following along and doing this, by the way? It is console.aws.amazon.com. And before I got asked, are any of you following along and doing this as I'm going? Okay. All right. So if I leave a screen that you're still working on, let me know and I'll keep up. So when you click continue, it will ask you your account type. I say personal because we're all about the free tier. The full name of the account will be the AWS account name by default. Remember your address, your zip code, and check at the bottom that you agree to the terms. And then once you click that, it'll ask you for a credit card. I didn't capture that.
You have to verify that first.
Yeah, it'll do the phone verification. Yeah, it does the phone, then it'll do the credit card. And neither of which I have slides for, so yes.
I'm sorry, can you use the URL for your presentation again? I have trouble seeing it.
And by the way, I will also put this URL into a comment on today's on Meetup. And for those who don't use Meetup and are on the NovaLUG mail list, I will also put it there.
How do we find the YouTube video?
Peter,
We'll be posted on Meetup, somebody can mail it out, and I'll usually post on mailing list too.
right. So, are you good now, or? You're good? Okay. Yeah, what I was trying to do is get single line transitions, and it
Symbols, web things are so,
basic.
yeah, I almost said amateurs is a term of endearment, so you can call it that.
Yeah, but it allowed me to do it at home. I did it several different places. I worked on this, so it just was easier. And I don't have access to like Dropbox or whatever at work, so I had to go with it. I think what I'll end up doing next time is I'll just create to do what I wanted to do. But all right, are we good? Okay, so once you've verified everything, you will go back to, you'll come back to the sign-in account or sign-in. You will start with your email address, you'll click next, and you'll put in your password. It's a basic login thing, so I didn't think I needed 2 slides for it. So this, once you have your first login to the screen you're presented with. The recently visited services, yes, that is the default that they put there because that is a phone verification. Those are the services that most people use. I did not cover CloudWatch because I use AWS for my personal stuff that I really don't care enough to monitor. And that's what CloudWatch is their internal monitoring. I just don't use it. I haven't covered it. There's plenty of documentation. And there are 2 different levels. There's a free level of CloudWatch along with when you get more in depth, you end up paying. We will cover the other 4, EC2, Route 53, IAM, and S3. So what you'll do at this point, if you click up here in services, it will give you a drop-down of all the AWS services. And you may not notice, but it's been cut off. It's hard enough to just be lines, and you would have even on your computer. So these are all the things that you can do with Amazon Web Services, and then some. And you can see that's why we're not covering all of them. So starting with the services that we will be covering, I'm going to start with VPC. The reason being is the VPC allows you to bring together your EC2 instance and your RDS instance as they're being created. You'll see you can have different EC2 setups as you go along, or VPC setups. Again, we'll be covering EC2, RDS, S3, Route 53, and IAM, or IAM, however you put it. So the VPC, if you click on VPC, and looking here, VPC is actually down is this very bottom little one. So right under networking and content delivery, that is the first entry. You'll come up with this. Amazon so kindly provides you with a default VPC to start with. You'll have a single route table. You'll have a single security group. You'll have 3 subnets and an ACL. We're going to be modifying some of this to allow for a DMZ, although we're not going to use it. We'll also set up for a public network that also has access to the network, and we will set up a private network which can only be used within your internal AWS instances. Although you can VPN in and it's part of your network. I don't cover. So the default VPC. The name up here will be blank. I put a name on it. I name everything in this intro-AWS because I'm going to delete this whole account when I'm done tonight. IP address associated with your VPC. In this case, it's 172.31.0.0 with the CIDR of 16. You can change that. Where I just finished working, they used 10, the 10.private networking because we have at least 40 different VPCs. The summary will give you a little more information about it, but the CIDR block is what's most important right now. Created, or here are the different services for virtual private cloud. The first one is will list your VPCs. The second will allow you to set subnets, route tables, internet gateways. Egress-only internet gateways, that's only available for IPv6. So I covered the first 3, and I stopped there. Another thing to note, and I'll point it out more when we create an EC2 instance, elastic IPs. When you create an EC2 instance, the IP address is DHCP supplied. So if your instance restarts, you will probably lose that IP address, just like your home network. Your 2 options are you can set up dynamic DNS, or you can assign your EC2 instance an elastic IP address. That's one of the things that can catch you out, because an elastic IP address is free as long as that IP address is associated with an EC2 instance. So if you have an EC2 that has an elastic IP address, and you delete that EC2 instance, you will be charged for the elastic IP address. $7.50 a month, roughly.
Is it free if the instance is stopped?
It is still free if it's stopped. Okay. It is as long as that instance, that IP address is associated with an instance.
It doesn't have to be run.
Correct. Okay. They just don't want people to hoard IP addresses just in. And I will repeat all that when we get to EC2 because it is important. It's caught me out more than once for about 4 months. You know, I only $30 over 4 months, but it still pissed me off because I'm a cheap bastard. We'll also talk about security groups when we talk about EC2 instances, I think. we may talk about it in a minute. So, your subnets. In this case, you are given a default subnet with no, or no, you are given 3. I added the name. Icon, click on the pen, and you can type in the name. Essentially, this is a tag in a bit. This right here is the network. I have both a local, the route table has both local and external. From here, you can edit and change the destinations, remove, because, and I'll get to that in a moment. Subnet, and again, give it a name tag. A drop down if you have more than one VPC on your account, you can choose it. It will then populate the CIDR. Use your availability zone. So if you want to keep everything all on one zone and have multiple VPCs across zones, and then click yes, create, and it'll create it. No need to do that now because they've got the 3. So back to this. We've got the routes. This is what I have for my DMZ, which actually I meant to take out the. I have them backwards. I had my DMZ as. Ignore that. And then here's my private. I've taken out the external address. That any instance sitting in that private VPC does not have external internet access. Either out of or into. It will have to go through another instance. And I only want my database server to talk to my web server. It doesn't need to go out to the internet. Nobody else needs to come in through there and security groups, which I'll show in a little bit. And that's essentially it. The only real change I made was naming them and taking the private and removing the full internet access. Outside of that, everything is, you can leave it at the defaults. Again, I did because this is just a demo. More than likely, and to be honest, would not use the AWS free here for production.
You want to mention the relationship between VPCs and you understand how they relate?
Okay, the route tables are set up, and each, where is it? And then each subnet is attaches to a route table, and it should be. I didn't change them in this. So when you click on it, you can edit the route table and pick which of the route tables you want to use. So I kind of did that, and I meant to change it and didn't. I apologize. So set up your subnet, your route tables first, and then set up your subnets to match. VPCs aren't my strong. With those because most of the time when I've done this, it was before. You'll see sometimes things listed as AWS Classic, and AWS Classic was before they really started pushing VPCs and setting up the default VPC. So you just set up two or three machines, and you'd use security groups to keep people in or out. Now they've decided, instead of doing that, to use VPCs, which I haven't used a whole ton.
There's two different things.
Pardon?
two different things.
Yeah.
Still security,
Yeah,
but
it's
at
still,
different levels.
it's different levels, and the VPC is one that they've started pushing more recently that I've seen. When I first started doing this stuff, free tier stuff, they didn't really, VPCs didn't come into it for me.
I use, the last 5 years, not when I've used it.
Has it? Well, it's been there. It's been available. Oh, really? Okay.
Anyway, go ahead.
But, all right, like I said, it's not my strongest suit. All right, EC2. Again, if you go to this is probably the first one on the left-hand side will be, yeah.
I'd like to ask a question on the subnet. Were those the same subnets that got created during that configuration?
Pardon?
The subnets that you just showed, were those the same subnets that got created during that configuration?
They're the default subnets. Yes.
How did you identify like which one belonged to PLC or?
That was, I named them. They all have, they're all identical, truthfully. They've got a slightly different network address, and the question is how, about subnets, how do you differentiate between the default subnets and by the IP range that they're given?
Have an ID associated.
And ID, yeah. But they, with the exception of the slightly different IP range, they're pretty much the
So, very long story. If we're going to have a network discussion, this will never end. Like John is saying, this can go so deep that we will just talk about this one topic for the rest of the day. But there is something that works the same way as something in the network stuff.
No.
So it's a set of addresses.
No, there's one in there.
Anything attached to it, they have to be part of that network address space to talk to one another. Otherwise, they will not be valid.
Bring that up.
But outside of that, in order for the package to leave that subnet, there needs to be a route to allow that to happen. So every subnet is sort of like a separate security zone within the network. It's even worse because even within that subnet, Amazon puts in rules, but that's a different discussion. So as you define subnets, it's just like on your computer. You have multiple routers at home or switches. You have multiple NICs, subnets, and you can isolate traffic between them. It's like you know, what we talk goes to this non-routable network. And then subnet, you need to associate what they call an internet gateway, for instance, in order for the traffic to be able to go to another thing or for you to access it. It has an internet gateway, otherwise it can't be I don't know, additional networking setup, setup routes to do that. The problem really is that, or the good thing is, that usually gets done out of the box the first time you set it. So out of the box, it just works. As yourself, you need to understand how it works. So don't do like what I do, is spend a whole day trying to figure out why I can't get to my boxes because I'm not doing that anymore, right? So there's those kind of things you have to think about. But there's a lot of levels of issues.
Yeah.
And your VPC defines a silo that is literally your virtual private cloud. Within that, you have your subnets. And within each of those subnets, you have either routes or instances that you are running with IP addresses. But again, the DNS has a completely different map. And all of that has to match. Right? So if you take a box that's associated with a subnet in one CIDR and be given an address in a different one, you're not going to get to it. It's going to be, which is unfortunate, because that means you have to kill it on Amazon. You can't log in. There's no console access. So once you kill your network, it's done, which is why most of us use DHCP. So that does not happen.
Okay. Any other questions on VPCs and that side? EC2. This is the initial screen. There is, by the way, there is more to these screens. Just this is the part we care about. What happened is you'll get to the screen. You've got nothing except for a single default security group, which you should never really use. You got to keep it, but I never use it. I'll create a new one. If you click on Launch Instance, you will be given a list of Amazon Machine Images, AMIs. It starts you off with a quick start, which lists several different, and the list goes farther down. There are thousands of different AMIs. Yeah. Okay. The quick start, there are 35. And those 5 include the most popular and the ones that Amazon, I think they're the ones that Amazon creates. There are other AMIs. There's one officially built by CentOS, built by OpenSUSE. And then there are a lot of private. Once you get past the quick start, and once you get past servers or AMIs built by companies you don't know about, don't touch them. Stick with companies you know about, like CentOS. Yes.
So this is where you go to set up your 3-day Windows?
Yes. Yes, and down a little ways, and thankfully it's not on the screen because I'd have cried. Down a little, there are your wind blows choices. You can also create AMIs, which is really, I'll point to it where you click to do it, but I'm not going to show you because everybody in this room, if you can log into a Linux box, should be able to create an AMI. Where creating an AMI is helpful is for this account, it'll be helpful on January 9th of 2019. What I can do is if I can't just data off, and if I don't feel like doing that, I can create an AMI, which is an image of my existing system. I then create my new account, and I share the AMI with the new account. Then I build a machine on the new account using that AMI, and I should have identical machines with the exception of networking, etc. And then what I'll do is I'll test the new one for a little bit, and once it's done, I'll change DNS, and I'll blow the old one away and blow the account away. So they're helpful, and they're easy to use. I don't have any AMIs because this is my brand new account that I just created a couple of days ago. So then you have AWS Marketplace, which is where you'll probably find the CentOS and other more Linux versions. It is, the question is, what is the OS for the Amazon Linux AMI? Amazon Linux is Amazon's own version of Linux, which is based on Red Hat. So the package management will be through Yum. It uses RPMs. I believe you can even attach to the EPEL repo.
On Red Hat or on CentOS?
And there's a difference. It's probably based on Red Hat because, they do the same thing that CentOS does. For those of you who don't know, CentOS basically takes the source code for Red Hat, removes the Red Hat branding, puts in CentOS branding, and compiles everything. Sorry. Yeah. It might be. I don't know. I don't use the Amazon Linux ones. But that's very possible. I'm not sure.
It stands for long-term support.
Yeah, and so
back saying free tier only, make sure you click that. That way you don't get the rails and the statistics that do require additional charges.
And I actually, sitting in a Red Hat office, I picked Red Hat. But it gave me free tier. It's still free tier. It didn't.
Red Hat, not Red. Anyway,
I use that one.
that's
So-
a different discussion.
Okay, yeah. So choose your OS, hit select, and now you are presented with all the different instance types, and this also scrolls down. The T2 Micro and smaller are free tier. So it's T2 Nano and T2. Both have a single virtual CPU, 1 or half a gig of memory. The instance storage, EBS, there is ephemeral storage that you can pay for, but it uses EBS. The network performance is a guideline. It's just if you're going to have low to moderate or need low to moderate network performance, that's what you choose. Right, you click next, configure instance detail, or you can just review and launch if you know you're going to take the default. But the instance details, it's kind of blurry through. Number of instances, it'll by purchasing option. They have what they call spot instances. Basically, if they have a machine that's almost full and they've got the space available, they'll give you, for roughly a third of the cost of an on-demand instance, they'll give you a spot instance. The stipulation is that instance can go away anytime, and they will give you up to a 2-minute warning for your instance to go away. And it normally will go away for somebody who's paying. But they are, you could have the instance for 2 minutes and then be told it's going away. You could have the instance for a few days and then it goes away.
Way to set up a Lambda, so I know they have the Lambda features. Can you set up something that will create an AMI based off that notice that's about to go away? So that you'll have a snapshot or a backup volume?
I have not even touched Lambda, so it was something I was about to start looking into for the company before I got laid off. A spot instance is, okay, say you use configuration management, Puppet, Salt, Ansible, whatever. You spin up an instance, you throw Salt to it, it configures it, you just want to test one thing, and you don't care, you don't need anything afterwards. You can spin up a spot instance, do your testing, and then it goes away.
A sandbox.
Yeah,
Consider the cloud, it's not the server, it's the CPU resource, right? It's not, I don't really want to use the cloud to run my servers like I do my data center. That's too expensive. I only want to run and spend the resources when I need to. So when I have a job, that could be, I love that example, like to run some data provisions and calculates a lot about, I need to run this right now, but I only need CPU per hour. Spot instance is great.
yeah.
If I need to do something like taxes, whatever, right? But something that has a limited line period, which most of the stuff we do has. I only want to use that. Why would I want to run my server 24/7 if I'm only using it 1 hour a day? Got it.
Yeah, and for that, why would I want, even if I'm only going to run it for a few hours, why pay? And this is more for when you get out of free tier. A big beefy machine, but you don't want to pay, $13 an hour. You could get it for five roughly, as a spot instance, and you just need it for a short time. So, basically, it gives use machines. that, priority order along. So you got your network subnet. We've talked about those. One thing to note in here, enable termination protection. What that does is that will, when you have that enabled, you have to terminate that instance. So if you have something that you want to keep running, you want to protect it against that so that somebody, especially in a business situation, so 2 or 3 admins all working off the same AWS account, and admin 1 is working on something and has this machine running, it keeps admin 2 from just coming along and blowing it away without thinking. It is helpful to have. Enable CloudWatch detailed monitoring. That's where you're going to start getting charged. You do not get charged accidental termination. Yeah.
If I may, just for anybody who's new to AWS, who's doing this for the first time, when you shut down your instance, it'll terminate. It'll delete your instance if you don't have the termination protection in place.
Well, there's a difference. They have stop or terminate.
Yeah, and you can very easily accidentally terminate your instance.
Right.
So if you're just getting into AWS, you might want to make sure you have that checked. Otherwise, you can completely blow away everything you set up by accident.
Also, a stopped instance only gets charged for the disk space it uses, not for the CPU time. So if you're using it, if you're out of free tier and you only need to use an instance, say you're doing it at home after work, you can have the instance shut down from, you stop the instance before you go to sleep at night. You start the instance when you finish work, and you're only paying for the time it's up. Outside of a little bit of money for disk space. And even then, it's trivial. You can also change tenancy. Your default tenancy will be shared. What that means is you are sharing a local computer with other EC2 users. If you don't want to share, if you're root and you can't share, you can share and have a dedicated instance, but you sure as hell are not getting the free tier. And it is a lot more expensive. I have no idea what T2 Unlimited is. I've never used it either personally or professionally, and I've never cared, so you can probably click additional charges and read more about it. Is that what it is? Oh, it's a T2 line? T2 network? Or backbone?
It's just how much you can put through bandwidth. Right?
Okay.
Stream media and all that stuff. Yep.
What is that? Is that these nine? Is that what that is? Is that what that is?
And it's just basically everything is limited. Right? You have shared resources. Be exclusive, right? And deciding, let's say, to do heavy streaming and all that. You can pay for additional capacity to the server. And that's what that tries to do is they won't cap your the amount of traffic to the server.
And then down here, you have a network interface. You can add an IP. I think you can add an elastic IP there, but I wait and I do it after the machine initially builds. I always have, and I hate change. All right. I mentioned before, tags are a great way to differentiate your machines. If you are in a production environment or you are in a type environment, you can use those tags. We used Salt for configuration management, and Salt would read the name tag, the instance, and that's how it would know which server it is. You can also use tags for charging customers. you have customers, you know, if you're providing hosting services for a customer, you can use a tag to pull. You can have up to 50 tags per machine if you're just that anal about having tags. Generally, about 5 or 6 is the most you'll probably ever need. But they are helpful. There are no tags to begin with. Just click add another tag. You put the tag key. The first thing you want to do is, the one I did is name, intro to AWS, and you'll see where that comes into play in a minute. And then click another, and you can keep adding them to your heart's content until you reach 50. Security group. Security group is, they are roughly equivalent to a firewall. Not quite as flexible, but that's a close approximation. So what you will want to do, the default security group will have SSH from all IP addresses, which you really don't want, but you gotta, what I find out the IP address of my home IP address, and then just change the source IP address so that only somebody on my home network can SSH. If my home IP changes, I just come into the console, change the IP address, and I'm good. It's maybe 2 or 3 minute job to do that. If you're going to have a web server, as I said over there in the comments, for web server or for secure web server, you can add as many as you need to this. And then security group name, I called it web server, description, whatever you want to put in there. If you want to differentiate web server, production, whatever you want to have for the description. And descriptions are a fairly new thing that AWS is starting to add to help you differentiate between different environments and machines. Now, when I click through on this, it will warn me the entire internet, because that isn't really the most secure way to do it. So, advised to change that as well. And finally, review instance launch. Here I've used Red Hat. Again, it says your security group web server is open to the world. It warns you. And then finally you hit launch. Is everyone caught up to where we are, or okay? Okay, yeah.
I am following, I really apologize if I'm getting on everyone's nerves, getting up a lot.
No, that's fine.
You made the statement that they're not quite as flexible. I work very closely with security groups where I work at right now.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of putting an IP address, you can put a range. You can also
Right.
put another security group. They are
Right.
very, very flexible.
And I'll show, they are flexible, but with IP tables, you can restrict by user, which you can't do in a security group. That's where I'm going. You don't use it often. I understand that. Use the user thing often, but it's not quite. I should have said not quite flexible. You can have them when I do set up the database, I have the security group next to this security group. So
Security groups and other accounts.
yes, yep. Yeah.
I think this is the right place. My scenario, I want to set up a web server running a LAMP stack for a class on web page design.
Mm-hmm.
Do I need to configure the VPC, or do I just do the EC2?
How is your? It depends. That's an it depends thing. Is
Well,
your
I think-
database, is your,
I've got web hosting through Bluehost.
okay,
and
right,
I have something similar to that.
okay. So that would come into, where the VPC and configuring that would come into play depends on your database. Is your database going to sit on the same server, or are you going to use RDS? And before you answer that, we'll go through RDS and you can see what that involves. If you're going to have the database on a separate machine, because the database is where all of your information is going to be, the stuff in your web server is essentially pretty much static, I would assume. Everything's going to come from the database. So you want to protect that database as much as possible. So if you have a database on a separate machine from your web server, then yes, you want to set up a VPC with a subnet that will not allow your database to be active.
So the MySQL server on the same machine as the web server.
Then no, you don't. If you have a single server. However, if they're going to give you 750 hours of free RDS, MariaDB is one of their choices. You can have, and we'll see that in just a few minutes. Yes is mine. Yeah. So you hit launch and your server, you hit launch and they talk to you about key pairs. Because your SSH access is with SSH keys. There are two ways you can do this. If you plan ahead and you have an SSH key that you want to use, that you've created yourself, because they use RSA, I think that's your only choice. Whereas if you want to use one of the stronger, newer encryption keys, you want to create it yourself. You can upload a key pair to, or your public key to AWS, and it can be included. You can have it as an, or you can create a new key pair. For this, I created a new key pair. Because again, I'm just going to delete this whole account when I'm done. You do not want to proceed without a key pair. Just it's not secure because yeah, and it will yell at you if you try to proceed without a key pair. I created a new key pair called Intro to AWS. You download the key pair, which will download public and private key files. You'll want to save them in .ssh, or if you're stuck using that horrible OS and you use PuTTY, you're on your own. You can put it in there somehow, some way.
You know, it's funny that you say that because they're actually implementing SSH.
Yes.
It's actually scary the movements are taking over.
Yeah, we'll just leave it at that. Yeah. Be sure to download the key pair. Keep it safe because once you hit launch instance, you will never be able to download the private key again. So be sure you keep it somewhere safe, or if you have your own key, obviously you'll have it somewhere safe. To upload your own key pair, in the EC2 screen on the left, you'll see a link for key pairs, and in there is where you upload your key. So, as I mentioned, talk about elastic IP addresses. Again, on the left side, on the EC2, there is an elastic IP link, which will take you to this. Your resource type will be instance. You can create a network interface separately. I, off the top of my head, can't think of a reason why, but you can. Oh, yeah, NAT. That's a good reason. It will give you, you'll choose the, in this case, you'll choose the instance. That is the instance ID of the server I just created, the EC2 instance I created. Once I pick that, I hit the arrow down. That's the public IP address. So it is the private. That's the private IP address of the machine I built, and it will associate the public IP to that address. Reassociation, I read about it the other night and I can't remember, and I apologize. But if you hit the info button there, it'll explain quite well.
You already have version 1 machine. You have built this, and now you're experimenting with a newer version of something. You're trying to do meltdown, whatever, and you want to test that. And you want that now to take over that IP address.
Okay.
So instead of going in first removing that old one and then assigning it
To the new one.
literally say, well, I'm going to create a new one with the same address, and it's going to move it forward. Without setting that check by, it's going to say it's not available because it's already taken.
Okay. And also, it gives, you are given a public IP address. As I said, it's a DHCP assigned. You can lose. It will tell you that if you associate an elastic IP address, you will lose that public IP address. But the whole purpose of the IP address is so that you don't care about and worry about public IP.
Anyone is on board with why we do this? Why this is necessary?
And again, remember, if you have an elastic IP address assigned and you decide to kill that instance, as soon as that instance is stopped, you are charged for your elastic IP address. Not when you terminate it, the instance goes away. So always, always check your elastic IP addresses after you kill a machine, and make sure they're all associated. And then from there, different AMIs, different AMIs use different default users. And so, like the Ubuntu AMI uses the Ubuntu user. Red Hat AMI uses the EC2 user. The easiest way to figure it out is try SSH's root to your server. It'll tell you the account that you should be using. And that's the easiest way for me. And once you know, then you know, and you don't have to worry about it. But that's the easiest way I found to tell what the default user is. And in this case, the EC2 user will have sudo access without a password to become root. So you still have root access, just you can't log in as root. And how they do this is if you log into your system and you look at root's authorized keys, it will give you that top line which tells you it won't port forward, no agent forwarding, no X11 forwarding, and then the command, it will echo what it put to the screen. I just kind of thought that was, I've never seen that done before, and I thought it was pretty cool. So if you have, if you have your own machine, when you lock down root, if it's accessible to others, maybe that's a good idea. I thought it was putting in there. And then when SSH-I, I had to point to my PEM file, and then -L EC2 user and my IP address. And as you can see, I can then become root with just sudo -I. Any questions on EC2? Okay. Can you talk up a little bit? Okay. Okay, the question was, and tell me if I'm wrong, essentially it was how does Amazon assign resources such as CPU and memory to your instance? Was that, I have no idea. My guess is, from my understanding, I think they use OpenStack or their own, is their own, or it
So
was,
they're moving towards, they're experimenting right now with KVM.
yeah,
that
that's
is
it.
more home, but for now, most of the stuff you can they didn't send
Right.
but they realized they're the only ones in the world using that. But in other words, that question is it's VMs.
Yeah.
No more, no less. If you go in and do some of those advanced options, if you get a dedicated instance, it's not a VM. It's managed. So VM.
V as in virtual.
Virtual machines, right? So in most cloud software providers out there, those are VMs. But what Amazon did was create their own OpenStack solution. So what they haven't done is use a standardized API. I would say Amazon has become a standard API for a while. They make no promises that they will be compatible with API now versus tomorrow or something like that. And that's part of the challenges by using Amazon. Because you can't necessarily say we'll set up in Amazon, move it to Google, for instance. They have their own API. And Azure has their own API. Now, if they all use OpenStack, that'll be freaking easy. Or we'll just change the address and that'll be done. But that's part of the challenge here, right? For free tier, that doesn't matter. But
Right.
if you want to run hundreds of servers and you want to have freedom to go to wherever is cheapest or best, that's something you do.
Right. And vCPU roughly equates to a core in a multi-core box. So if you have a quad-core CPU in a physical server and you are using that quad core, you want to choose an instance size that has 4 vCPUs. And so that's when sizing out for customers in my last job, that's how I kind of picked it.
So does that mean 4 virtual machines?
No, it's 4. Your virtual machine sits on a physical box. And if you have a 4 vCPU machine, then it will take essentially, and this is very basic, it will essentially take 4 cores from the CPUs on that box, and that's what your instance runs on. It will take 16 gig of the hundreds of gigs of RAM in that box, and that's what your machine.
Remember, it's similar. It's not, if you ever run VMs, you're not getting a dedicated core. You're running, if I have a VM box, but physical CPU has 8 cores, I can run VMs that all have 2 cores in them, and they still run. Even though I don't have 16 cores in the box. Amazon does exactly the same thing. This is what they mean by the shared infrastructure. A machine that has, in that scenario, those 8 VMs running, they're all running at full speed. You can't create more power. So they're all sharing those CPU and hence they get slower. But in most cases, not everything is running at full speed. So you get the assumption that you have 60 cores. You can utilize that hardware better, even though no one actually gets a real true core. You share that with someone else.
It's time sharing to the max.
Yeah.
What IBM created in the 50s, yes.
Yes.
No big deal. Right?
And also, one of the resources I have lists the different, has a list of all the AWS instance types and their sizes, as well as there's another link that has the cost as well. Also, guys, it is just past 11:30, so I'm going to kind of go a little faster now. Granted, EC2 was the biggest one that I did because that's what most of you are going to use.
You can go to one if you want to, or you can
I don't care. I have no life. And my dog that chews is in a crate, and the other two are fine. So I'm good. All right. Any questions on EC2? All right. Cool. Those of you following along, are you keeping up? Are you happy where we are?
Stupid question number 35.
Stupid questions.
Only want to use an EC2 to, for example, do my TurboTax.
Right.
I don't need the virtual platform.
You don't care. You just set it up and the VPC is essentially for the having two separate. Yeah. In this case, it's about databases. There could be, the company I worked for, we had a NAT server and a proxy server that sat publicly. Subnets and crap like that. But for an intro, yeah. All right, so relational database services. These are your choices. Amazon Aurora is essentially You're just stretching. Okay. Amazon Aurora is essentially based on MySQL, much like Amazon is essentially based on Red Hat. Your other choices: MySQL, MariaDB, Postgres, Oracle, and Microsoft SQL Server. And yes, shock of all shocks, you can actually get an Oracle database on the free tier. You have to stipulate that that's a dev or a test box, and you cannot have it multi AZs.
Utilizing PostgreSQL, at this point in time, would recommend against using PostgreSQL and RDS if you're doing any types of triggers or functions. They disable SQL language. So it's more or less an Excel spreadsheet. You updates, inserts, deletes, selects, but
Okay. And for those of you on YouTube, he said that PostgreSQL is basically trimmed down so that triggers and a lot of the cool functions of Postgres have been taken out for security. So in this case, I believe I chose MariaDB. In this case, actually, all instances are intended for use outside of production or under the free use. So you're using dev or test, I think, for any of the databases. But that's just, I look at that from a stability standpoint because you're getting a very small instance for a database, and it may not be it won't be the fastest. And you'll have issue potential. So you choose I chose dev test, and you start filling out. Because again, T2 micro, I think there's a nano, I'm not sure, I forgot when I looked. 1 vCPU, 1 gig of RAM. Because we're using free tier, also, if you check only enable options eligible for RDS free usage, that will prohibit you from choosing multi-AZ deployment, which is something that will definitely kill the possibility of free use. You're allowed a maximum of 20 gig for your RDS instance. After this, you have your identifier. That's going to be your database name. Your admin master username is the admin user and the password. You'll click next on that. I think below they do periodic maintenance, and you can pick the time slot that you want your maintenance to be done. Maintenance can include minor version upgrades to your database. So if Oracle 11.2.0.14 comes out and you're running .10, it will be upgraded in your maintenance window. You can also have database can be snapshotted every specific time. They keep snapshots for, I believe, free tier, so you can roll, and you can also create your own snapshots. And but it's pretty self-explanatory. Then once you click next, you'll get here are your next choices for network and security. Default VPC will be filled out. You don't want your instance to have public access. You can pick an availability zone in your region. Probably you won't have a preference. Then it can create a new VPC security. It will create that configured properly, so you want to go in and change that, which I'll show you in a minute. Then your database name again, you can change the port and DB parameter group. That leave the default. You can't change that. So once your machine has been built, this first screen was while it was creating the instance, so there's nothing in here because it's connected. But this will show you use your database. If you scroll down, it'll give you details about your database. In one of these, and I thought it was this screen, which will be the name of your database dot some domain.
Is that it, right? In the middle bar.
Endpoint. Oh yeah, yes, that is actually it. But they also give it to you somewhere a little more. And then again, you can tag your databases. Here you can see what logs are written. It keeps track of recent events. If you are going beyond the free tier, you can create database replicas and have replication. In a few minutes, I will log into EC2, or I'll try to, and I'll bring up the security group. Because you can have, as you mentioned, you can have your security group allow access from another security group. And what I essentially did is I said the only servers in my web server security group can have access port 3306 to my database. That's pretty much it. So from here, I'm now back onto my web server, and I've logged into my. So now you can start all the stuff you need to do. You can make any system database changes. The database is residing on a server that you do not have access to. You can only make changes to your actual database. You can't touch the underlying infrastructure. If you don't like how Amazon does SQL on their RDS, then you'll want to build a separate instance. S3. Any questions on RDS? Okay, cool. All right, S3. When you pull down services, click on S3. Assuming you have buckets, you have anything in S3, this is what you'll see. For those of you creating an account, your new account, you will have nothing under these bucket lists, under that list. So what I've got here is I've got buckets called Jck-Library, Jck Music, Jck KeyPass, which actually is empty now, and then job.noil.com. Buckets are, the bucket names are global. Nobody can create a bucket now called Jck-Library anywhere in the world. When the bucket name is in use, it is blocked. Nobody else can use it. So you need to keep that in mind when creating a bucket name and give it a name that's useful and unique. And AWS will sure tell you if your name is not unique. That's why, as opposed to just library, which has all my ebooks in it, I have to name it Jck-Library. You'll see access. You can grant access to other AWS users, to other users on your AWS account, or public. And I'll show you that can be done in a minute. You can also have public, as I said. As I said, you can create a static web page in S3. It's a pain in the backside, so I don't do it. This was when I played around with it 2.5 years ago. Then going with the library, if you click on the bucket name, it'll give you, these can be different because your bucket name is unique. Anything past it, it doesn't matter. Those are my different, these are different directories. That's actually a single file. It'll give you the size and the storage class. Again, you can have more replication, which will cost money. Here are the permissions. Access from my account. I can list objects, write, read, write bucket, change the bucket. I can add an AWS account or give it public access. You can also write from your EC2 instances. But again, once you get above 5 gig, you're paying for that data. And to change the permissions, you click on that, and then I forget the exact name of the button at the bottom, but it's pretty obvious. Within the library in AB-PDF, there is a file, AWS administration.pwf. That's the overview of it. The E tag is a hash of the file. So if you download, you can take a hash to make sure you got the full file. At the bottom, were this to be a publicly available file, anyone could click on that link and download the PDF. But because it's private, you can't, because I'm that mean. And then you can change the permissions. You can open the file within the browser, download, etc. They're pretty self-explanatory.
So in terms of the free service, after a year, does that start charging money?
After a year, you are charged for S3. And again, it's cheap. I have roughly 40 or 50 gig in my S3 buckets, and between that and Route 53, I've yet to pay $10 a month in a single month. They do charge you also for bandwidth in and out of S3. So if somebody's downloading, a bunch of your files, then you're charged for bandwidth. But again, it's not that expensive. Any questions? 3. Yes. Yes, you can. You'd have to, own cloud might. I'm debating. I don't think own cloud or its new offshoot can actually connect to S3. I think they're working on it, but your own private Dropbox, meaning you'd have to functionally, yes, it could do that. Short of
Access it myself from different locations.
right.
Yeah.
Right, short of, when you put something in your Dropbox directory, it automatically propagates. You could do your homegrown version, your own homegrown version of that, if you wanted. You had a question? No? Okay. Any other? And you get 5 gigs for free. Yeah. Yeah, so you won't, it's only a year, so, there's that. Yeah.
So, S3 is basically like a separate database that Amazon manages on its site. Got things on it, or
No. No, you can't, you can put logs, automatically from other things, but everything else you've got to actually upload and do. You can upload whatever you want to it.
I think that. So I'm asking if S3 is a database that Amazon manages on its site.
S3 is not a database. It is just it's file storage. So if you have any kind of files, like I've got my ebook library on S3, so I can get to it from any computer I have access to S3. That type thing. Or actually, you saw in there, I've got part of my music collection is on there too. So, but it's not database. It's not related to any database.
And how is Amazon doing? Any insight what's going on the Amazon side that
What do you mean how? How does it matter how we do it? It's not this one, right? So you get basically lockup stack, we translate. It's a file system. They implement Amazon, you can mount them as a file system. You can mount them on your local machine. If it has Ssh Access, for instance, you can just go back up. So anything that requires a share with someone. What you get. I'll put it in that machine. I'll set it up. And if you know stack, you have what kind of, you have lots of stack and how you want to expose it. Same thing here. Other than that, there's nothing. Just create a block data that dynamically, or decrease. So for you, what matters is you pay for your usage. If you take the EBS volumes, like when you create a box, and you say, hey, I know in 2 years I need 100 gigs of memory, or this space. And the file system with 100 gigs right now, you are paying for that 100 gigs up front. This tree, nah. When you get to 100 gigs, you're going to pay for that. But now, if you only have 5 gigs on there, that's what you're going to pay.
Yeah.
I should say it's free for 5. But it's dynamically increasing or decreasing depending on the use. That's the advantage of this tree.
And like Peter said, if you get going over your Amazon will warn you. So the email address that you have associated with AWS, as long as that AWS account is up and running, you really want to check that email occasionally to make sure you're not going to get charged. What I do is I just have it forward to my normal account, and I tag it there, and that's how I know. All right, any other questions on S3? All right, we just have two more, Route 53 and M, which are going to be fairly quick. Route 53, when you click on it, you keep clicking through to create hosted zone, and here's you have your domain name. You can have a comment, which is like a tag. The type, you can have it set up for private DNS for within your VPC. So that can be helpful if you want to shorten the big long SURL to database.local. You can add a CNAME record into DNS, and that will shorten that. So once that's filled in, you get this. Yes, I have currently, and as I said, I only get charged a couple dollars a month. That it lists your hosted zones. It'll tell you whether it's public or private, and it'll tell you how many records are in there. And then the comment at the far side. If you click one of your hosted zones, here are your records. I don't own this. I own the domain, but I don't use it anymore, so that IP address is no longer mine. Not that anyone really cares, I'm sure. Yeah. Hey, have at it. Somebody else will be pissed off, not me. To create a record set, put in the name, so www. Whatever, and the value is your IP address. Live, that's how often DNS cache gets updated. So they choose 5 by default, which is probably overkill. It's up to you. It just means how long you can potentially wait if you change the address. And of course, you've got your name servers, which you'll deal with when initially setting up. Any questions on Route 53? It is very easy. Yeah.
If you own your domain, you had applied out with something like GoDaddy or Gandhi, where you can set up your domain name.
Amazon's actually tricky. Amazon's pretty tricky. Click, make a domain, and that domain name is available. They'll do it all for you. They'll charge you for that domain. But if there's no GoDaddy, there's all kinds of guidance that says how to transfer the domain to Amazon. It's easy.
Right. But yes, even though GoDaddy does give free domains, GoDaddy, I think, retains some form of quote-unquote ownership. I know at one time...
Yahoo's record is managed through Wait,
right?
And its NS record associated with that is what you're paying, let's say, for where that NS record is managed. It's up to you.
Yeah. Okay. No, I get mine through Register, just because that's who I've gotten my domains from the beginning. No.
Why would you do your DNS on Amazon instead of Register?
Because Register will supply me the domain name, but they don't provide domain names. I mean, I should say they do, but it's this is just easy.
So here's the reason why you're doing it. So as long as you're free tier, I don't think it matters. Right? So forget about wanting just a single server, and there's really no complexity there, whether it's even as what you tend to have is some kind of script language, could be Java, it could be Ansible, could be something that's going to go in and create all of these things. Keeping it all under one hat, one API, is going to make those scripts a lot easier to manage. So the fact alone that I can create servers and manage the identity in one place and have it all synced is a huge benefit. And that's the public identities. And what this also gives you is the private identities. So now I have a single API where I can manage all those identities. DNS doesn't care where it's hosted. And then I'm sure it has, you can look it up, it has 4 backup servers always safely enough to assume that they will stay on. So I don't have that concern. And you get it all in the same API that I use to create EC2 instances. I can create Route 52 instances. So in the script that sets up my server, I can do it all in one. Instead of having a script set that goes out to your provider and then hoping that that DNS record updates when my server starts up. Here you know it's
And also, it doesn't restrict you from getting domain names from the same registrar. I can, because I use register for all of them, that's just me personally. I have gotten one from network. I did have one. I didn't own it, but I do dog rescue as well as being a geek, and I'm stupid enough to foster dogs. And I used to manage the DNS for one of the rescues I worked for, and they used network solutions. That was the registrar. So I had that in here. That it comes from. I have managed. So.
Some places you get them, they won't turn it loose because they want to make the money of renewing and having a beat on the head.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not always easy. Yeah.
I'm new to the Route 53. I didn't know they did that. In the past, I've round robin DNS or different things for redundancy. What's the flexibility with Route 53 for like load balancing and redundancy?
all built in.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's not flexible.
This is the enterprise front end to the DNS service, right? So everything
Yeah.
you see there is already replicated.
Right. It's global.
Well, I understand that there would be redundancy in the DNS because Amazon provides that for different zones. But what about if I wanted to have, set up some round robin DNS to have redundancy of my own instances or servers, whether or not they're hosted at Amazon or AWS?
If you add multiple entries there, that's round robin, right? So if I create an object set with the same name but a different IP address, you're creating a zone file. So it has the exact same effect.
And if you see, there's a wait. So you can, if you have the same name, you can wait.
You can do a lot more than just a record. You have the exact same
Yeah.
records.
Flexible as well.
Yeah, and that
Yeah.
drop-down box is as big as your normal line setup is.
Right.
So you can do the names and
CNAME, text, SOA.
The Google A's, is all you can.
the option of specifying other ports other than 53.
So internally, it's always going to be 52. You're going to the average DNS server. Same server you go to when you shop on Amazon is the server that you go to. Right? And is if you go in and use somebody's features, and we haven't even talked about night load balancing, they set it up. Right? It's all connected.
I knew they did
That's
that.
how they get you. Right? Sorry?
I knew they did level balancing. I just didn't know they. I've never heard Route 53.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I haven't talked about elastic load balancing because it is available as a free tier thing. But to load balance, don't you kind of need two machines? Have two machines.
Yeah,
So.
you have to do
So it's free, but it isn't. So keep in mind that Route 53 is not free. They charge you X amount per domain, and then they charge you like a pittance for, I think it's like a penny per million inquiries. So it's nothing. I think it's 50 cents. It's 50 cents a month for the domain name, and then a penny request. So it's
Like, okay, you have, if you look,
down to how many requests come in. If you have more hosts, more entries, you obviously have more requests come in.
but if they're just subdomains,
NS lookup is considered an inquiry. Yeah.
I use probably quite a bit.
Right.
Only charge for the public.
Sorry, I should have. Yes. Yeah, and also, by the way, these things, in most cases, what you see on the screen does scroll, keep scrolling. Just these are more popular. Amazon.
So depending on how you put
Yeah.
these up all from scratch.
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
They are dynamic. They can literally change the panels on the size of these servers that we find.
Right.
You know, these NS servers all run from Amazon, right? So if Amazon changes their infrastructure, they will update this stuff.
okay.
Literally is set and forget from your perspective. If it's a zone that Amazon posted on their servers, they manage it.
All right. Any other? Okay. IAM, Identity and Access Management. I'm only going to go over this one screen. This is the default screen that you get to when you go there. It gives you a security status. As I mentioned, you can have different users to have different access. So you can have a user that can only access RDS, a user that can only access Route 53, S3, whatever. You can break it down. That is more advanced than what I'm going through today, which is why I'm not doing it. But I'm showing this because you can also have multi-factor authentication. I personally do it with, and I don't use everyone uses. I use Google Authenticator equivalent for my MFA. I don't do it on my free accounts because I don't give that much of a crap. I watch them closer. And here, create individual IAM users. I haven't. Permissions go with the, doing that and setting up an IAM password policy, which just forces users to have, 14, 20 characters, symbols, and just, so you can really piss your users off. And that. So IAM is another one of those subjects. I could sit here for weeks and not cover all of IAM. IAM's involved with permissions on S3 buckets. IAM is everywhere within it, and if you want to learn more, you're going to have to do it on your own because I couldn't hit everything you guys would all want to hear. And here are the resources. As I said, the free tier info I put on there, console login. This is a listing of the EC2 types and the costs. You can also do VPC peering, which I hadn't talked about. So you can have a VPC account and with a VPC with another AWS account. Where that can come into play is if you have 2 email addresses and get 2 free accounts, and you can peer them, have a VPC peering, and they can almost appear as one. Yeah, true. Yeah, you region, not the same availability region. And it's not difficult to set up. I knew I'd run out of, so I the links there. Questions? Yes?
When we set up our EC2 instance, you mentioned we need to go back and put our actual IP address in for limiting SSH connections. Where do we go?
Security groups. And pick the security group that your EC2 instance belongs to. Click on inbound something, and then click edit, and you can add you can edit what's there, or you can add IP addresses as well. Yes.
So I'd like to set up a Dropbox like for myself. I like to access files on my Droid, Windows, and Linux.
Right.
What route would you suggest? And I want to maintain security.
As far as AWS, you're talking S3. As I was saying, it's not like S3 can monitor, can monitor this directory on your computer and it'll automatically make the changes. You have to build something like that for yourself. Basically, what it would be is if there's a file you want to edit, you go out to S3, you download the file, you edit it, and then you upload it and replace.
If you actually yourself and you want to use that as an example, I would recommend looking at GitHub. You'll probably find 24 pieces that already have something.
Yeah, there are tools that will do it. Just you have to. That's.
I love the convenience of it's there.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? All right. One of the things I was asked about what we were going to talk about next month. I was considering as a follow-on to AWS is, and I didn't even mention it at all, although Peter brought it up. AWS has a command line, AWS CLI, that you can use from a Linux box, and you can do everything, pretty much everything you can do in the console, you can do from command line, and more. Would that be something, and would an intro to AWS command line be something that would interest you guys?
I would say if you are only interested from a free tier, I don't think Mac is satisfied. If you use AWS every day, you don't use the console. I'll just put it like that.
Right.
That's too slow.
Or if you have more than one, if you have more than one email address and somehow create more than one AWS account, it can also be helpful. But is that something that you guys would be interested in? It would be an intro type thing. It would be roughly the same level of what you had today, but it would deal with AWS command line, and I'd be probably sitting there typing, and it would be all terminal based. Yeah.
If you need any help, that's what I do day in and day out.
I added that, but I appreciate that. Shoot me an email on Meetup.
On what?
Did you get this through Meetup, or how did you?
2 weeks ago, I joined the meetup last night.
Okay,
Joined
Meetup. As I said, my name. You'll see it. My name on the front. I'm John Kennedy. Send me an email through Meetup, and I'll send you my actual email address and talk. Outside of that, if anyone has any topics that they would also be presenting, as you guys can see, we're generally pretty good.
Sensitive topic, like the blog, but I'm just curious, how many people here are kind of curious with the okay, I didn't know what the range of
Raise your hand. Send me an email on Meetup. We do have a NovaLUG email list that is very good for if you have Linux questions and you want to learn about Linux. We are.
With Linux experience, it's a good mailing list.
Yes, but especially for people without email. And any of you, if you're on Meetup, email me, and I will get you the information to sign up for the NovaLUG email list.
I go to NovaLUG.org.
Pardon?
NovaLUG.org.
That'll work.
Responds and all.
Yeah, we're working on that. We're gonna bring the website back, but we don't now. And again, I'd like to thank Susie for the food and the refreshments. And for those of us looking for jobs, Susie will be happy to help.
Thanks, John, for speaking.
If you have any questions about what I presented, put it in a comment on today's meeting or send me an email. For those who aren't on Meetup, you know my email from the mailing list or send it there. So have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and I will go ahead and from your reaction today, I will do a presentation on AWS CLI, intro to it next month. And keep in mind our space, RSVP, and please keep your RSVPs up to date. If you can't make it and you've said yes, please change it.
I just had one more thing to add. I actually manage my own meetup as well. It's in Alexandria. It's a hybrid cloud meetup. There were a couple of questions that were asked. Oh, I manage a meetup in Alexandria. It's called the Metro Hybrid Cloud. We essentially have a half data center, half training room with a full scenario-based firing, and Chuba have both been there. There were a couple of questions that were asked that I think could be conveyed visually about the domain zero simulation, what you were asking about, and then the block subnetting. If you guys want to do a whiteboard session, would you guys be okay with that?
No, I want.
I mean, just right now, just right in the back.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay, great.